Channel on June the 13th alone. You say you're smashing the gangs. The gangs are unfortunately running rings around the Labour government, aren't they?
This are victims of the most atrocious crimes who deserve justice, and those criminals need to be prosecuted. When we came into government, as I think we've spoken about...
What happens when a politician's words don't match the facts? Watch as this Labour MP faces an intense grilling over his claims about illegal migrants and more.
Do you accept that you now did mislead the Question Time audience last week when you suggested that the majority of people crossing the channel illegally...
But it's his shocking response to one particular question that leaves everyone stunned. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Darren Jones's comments about illegal migrants might have sounded empathetic, but they quickly became the focal point of one of the most tense exchanges on live television. Jones asserted that the majority of illegal migrants consisted of women, children, and babies.
Referring to the total number of people being a majority of women, children, and babies, I was telling a story about a visit that I had to the border.
A claim that struck an emotional chord. The issue of illegal migration is already highly polarizing, but framing it in such humanizing terms seemed designed to steer the conversation toward compassion. However, the debate took an unexpected turn when the interviewer challenged Jones with a decisively different perspective, one grounded in stark numerical evidence. The host didn't waste any time dismantling Jones's statement. Citing data that painted a completely different picture, she revealed that the majority of illegal migrants were, in fact, young men, many in their 20s and 30s.
Were women, children and babies, when in fact they're adult males.
Delivering the statistics with a deliberate tone, the host left no room for interpretation, highlighting not only the scale of the issue but also the potential inaccuracy of Jones's earlier claim. By presenting these numbers so directly, she effectively set the stage for Jones to either retract or clarify his position. As the spotlight shifted back to Jones, his immediate defense was careful but not wholly convincing. He clarified that his statement referred specifically to the people he met on certain boats rather than the broader population of migrants entering the country illegally. While this explanation added some context, it also introduced a layer of ambiguity.
Channel on June the 13th alone. You say you're smashing the gangs. The gangs are unfortunately running rings around the Labour government, aren't they?
Was Jones suggesting that his personal experience contradicted national data, or had he poorly communicated the scope of his statement from the start? Even Jones himself seemed to concede the need for clarity, hinting at the possibility that his words could have been misunderstood. But rather than settling the debate, his reframing only deepened the tension.
Reaction that we've had from the public, but I was very clear in my mind and in the story that I was telling that I was referring to those specific boats.
The host pressed further, emphasizing the disconnect between emotional narratives and hard facts. Each question forced him to grapple with the wider implications of his comments, from public trust to policymaking. And as Jones doubled down on his interpretation of events, he inadvertently exposed how fragmented and complex the migrant issue really is, a crisis shaped by competing realities. The conclusion was as sharp as it was uncomfortable. The host didn't shy away from pointing out how easily unclear language can mislead or polarize a debate. This segment, though contentious, set the tone for the even more pressing topics about to unfold. The interview didn't stop at Darren Jones's controversial comments on illegal migrants. As the discussion veered into other critical issues, Jones quickly found himself facing intense scrutiny over Labour's positions on topics ranging from the UK's role in Middle Eastern conflicts to the government's response to grooming gangs.
This are victims of the most atrocious crimes who deserve justice, and those criminals need to be prosecuted. When we came into government, as I think we've spoken about...
These high-stakes conversations exposed a pattern in Jones's responses, one that critics would call evasive and calculated, while others might view it as cautious political maneuvering. When questioned about the possibility of military involvement in the Middle East, Jones hesitated before offering a vague answer. Rather than ruling out potential actions, he opted for what sounded like a rehearsed line, emphasizing the need to evaluate all options.
I think you're asking Camilla about the situation in the Middle East between Israel and Iran.
It was the kind of response that often frustrates the public, especially against the backdrop of heightened tensions in global conflicts. The host immediately challenged the lack of specificity, pressing him for a clearer stance. Still, his reluctance to commit left an impression of avoidance rather than leadership. The conversation then shifted to the government's handling of grooming gangs, another contentious topic rife with public anger.
When he worked with Baroness Casey to bring the first prosecutions for grooming gangs in Rochdale many years ago.
Here too, Jones's responses seemed overly careful. His delayed acknowledgement of recent policy changes came across as hesitant, almost as though he was trying not to alienate factions within his party. When the host pointed out apparent inconsistencies in Labour's messaging on the issue, Jones sidestepped again, pivoting instead to criticisms of prior Conservative governments. While this strategy might appeal to loyal Labour supporters, it dodged the questions at hand, further amplifying the host's critique. Perhaps most striking was Jones's approach to economic matters. When pressed on the possibility of tax rises under a future Labour government, his answer was non-committal, emphasizing global economic pressures instead of offering anything concrete. This attempt to shift blame outside the UK's borders prompted the host to push harder, questioning whether his party could truly address domestic financial concerns without clearer policies. Rather than reassuring viewers, his vagueness left room for doubt, reinforcing the interview's recurring theme: deflection and ambiguity. By the end, the host openly accused Jones of failing to provide transparency, calling it emblematic of wider accountability issues within Labour. The entire exchange felt like a spotlight on the growing disconnect between political rhetoric and public trust. This interview wasn't just a heated exchange. It highlighted a deeper issue: how political communication often falls short of public expectations. Darren Jones's responses, hesitant and unclear, reflected the growing divide between polished rhetoric and the demand for transparency. When politicians rely on avoidance or ambiguity, it risks undermining public trust, especially when journalists persistently demand clarity. This encounter serves as a reminder that accountability isn't optional, it's essential. So, how should we as viewers respond? By asking harder questions, analyzing every claim, and refusing to accept empty answers. After all, if transparency remains elusive, what does that mean for democracy itself?